Welcome back to another edition of SteraCast, where we talk about all things disinfection. Today I have a very special guest, Patty Olinger. Some of you may know her from the world of GBAC, Biosafety, and ISSA. She's deeply rooted in the biosafety world and the disinfection world. So we brought her on today to talk about SteraMist and all things disinfection. So Patty, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we'll get started today with basically your professional career. You've been all over the place in the biosafety, the healthcare, the GBACs of the world. So take me through your professional career and how you got started in all of this.
Yeah, it's kind of a wild ride. I have a degree in biochemistry. My undergraduate degree is in biochemistry from Texas A&M. And the Aggies. And then I have a master's in law, which is a very heavy focus on public health law, especially international public health law. And I started out as what we used to call a lab rat. And so I was at the bench for about 7 years in pharmaceutical industry. It was the Upjohn company when I first started there. And then it went through merger mania. We went through, the Upjohn company, Pharmacia and Upjohn Pharmacia. In there, Monsanto was involved at one point in time, and then Pfizer. And that was 21 years of my career. And I had the best of, to me, both worlds of human health and animal health. So what is now Zoetis was the animal health site that I provided some support to, and it was research safety. So chemical research safety and biosafety. I was very fortunate to have been at a site that focused on infectious disease research. We put 3 of the first 6 AIDS drugs on the market. And, I was learning biosafety when a lot of these things went into place, and the bloodborne pathogen standard and some of the other things. It was interesting because when Pfizer came in and they started shutting down our research site, I chose to leave and I ended up at Emory University. Well, big difference from Michigan down to Atlanta. Traffic is a big deal compared to, rural Michigan. And that was another thing that, my career there took me from, again, academic research, big academic research, we surround the Center for Disease Control, literally. Our campus surrounds CDC. So we had a lot of collaboration there. And while I was there, my staff started providing more and more support. We did all of the radiation safety support. So, for example, all the X-ray equipment in Emory Healthcare. That's a lot of, imaging equipment. We did all the environmental support to them. And then also biosafety. And that was significant because we were what we used to say, we were the crash site for CDC. So the smallpox lab, in addition to the 4 Ebola patients that we treated in 2014. That's where I met SteraMist, because SteraMist was a USAID winner and for Ebola innovation. And we ended up with 3 of their units during that time, especially, and use them. I mean, it was one of those things that, it was a no-brainer to have that one of the units. And at that time, you only had the environmental unit and the surface unit.
Right.
Now you have so many more. And it was, we had a unit just sitting outside of the patient area where we had the Ebola patients, just in case, we had, an unseen event happen that we needed to grab something quickly. We recognized during that time that there was a problem with public health preparedness. And we're not talking about, we knew the healthcare, the hardening of healthcare and making sure that we were ready for an outbreak or pandemic. But more importantly, to me, I've always been one who it needs to go beyond just the laboratories. Now, I'm the convener for ISO for the development of international standards on biorisk management, and have been involved with, biorisk management from the time we started to send workshop agreements. I don't want to say how many years ago.
Only a few.
Only a few, to ISO 35001 now. And interesting, there was a group of us, Jeff Jones, Clay Wardlaw, there's some folks from MaxAir, Dean Kirk, and others that we were involved with the fact that, we really need to do better. And this concept of the Global Biorisk Advisory Council came about, and it was really training that front line to be prepared, whether it was at a hotel, in a front desk, or, service providers, because if we had a pandemic, which now we know what that's like, we needed to be better prepared, because I've always argued that by the time somebody comes to the emergency room, it's too late. And we have to be better about being able to detect, respond, and then recover. So I gave a couple keynotes on teamwork and success of the, from an EHS standpoint during all the Ebola and just in general. And I happened to give a keynote to the cleaning industry at an IICRC meeting. John Barrett was there from ISSA, and he said, this concept of GBAC, I really want to have it part of ISSA because we want to change the way the world views cleaning. And especially when we start getting into the sanitization and disinfection, because it's confusing for a lot of people. And what the tools that we've had for so many years was, we see it right now in the BNBL still today, just put a 1 to 10 dilution of bleach. And while bleach has saved many, many lives, not necessarily the best thing to put on all surfaces. And we all know that there are hazards associated with it, health hazards, you name it, and residuals. So interestingly, in 2019, they brought GBAC into ISSA and convinced me to leave Emory. And, that was the fall of 2019, and we all know what happened in 2020. And so I was really busy with putting an accreditation program for facilities for GBAC and working basically with my passion of facilities worldwide, all types of facilities, whether it was healthcare, whether it was nursing care, whether it was stadiums, arenas, spas, which was fun, but also people. And that has been a real passion for me.
That's great. You've been all over, been all around the world, doing many different things. You've seen all these sorts of backgrounds with disinfection and healthcare and cleaning. How important is it to collaborate with all sectors of business, industry, all sectors of healthcare to get a cohesive knowledge of disinfection and how to be prepared for the next pandemic? So how important is that collaboration for everybody?
It's more important than sometimes I think we give it credit, because it's not if, but when. Yes, everybody's so tired of COVID. We all want to move on. But the reality is that we could have a different pandemic tomorrow. And we were all kind of surprised that it actually happened. We've been talking about it, but it actually happened. And, there was a lot of things that we learned. It's a little disconcerting sometimes to see that people have kind of forgotten some of the things that they've learned.
People are quick to forget.
But in reality, what we need to be focusing on is, you're right, it doesn't matter. First of all, from our standpoint, like from SteraMist or any company out there that has equipment and, chemistry and disinfectants and cleaners, is understand the industry that you're talking to. Because the language that you use in healthcare is different than the language that you're going to use in food safety, for example. In the U.S., we're very regulated. In other countries, we may not be as regulated, but their pain points, their pinch points, their concerns are different than, and what you find sometimes is they may be very similar, but their language is a little different. And so learning the different, what I would say, verticals and disciplines is really important to be able to get that message across.
Sure. And the collaboration is so important with that, and getting everybody to understand and talking the same language almost, even though you're saying different words, whether it's sanitation versus decontamination, cleaning versus versus sanitation or whatever. So you talked about putting out the first, 5 AIDS medicines? That
3 of the first
3 of the first 6. Okay. So these days we're pumping out, commercial drugs and commercial vaccines like there's, just like it's bread almost. So how bringing in somebody like SteraMist or technologies in the past, how is the landscape different than it was back when you were first starting with all these high-level labs and biosafety containment centers and things like that?
So I think one of the things that we've seen, and I think the pandemic actually highlighted some things. And first of all, we have a workforce issue. We just don't have the workforce that we've had. I don't know where all the people went, but we know we have a workforce issue. So you need to do it quicker, faster, better, is one thing. The other part of that is you need to make sure that what you're doing is effective the first time and that you don't have to go back 2 or 3 times. That's one thing that SteraMist has that, you have a 6-log kill. You work on C. diff. If you're working on some of these more difficult pathogens to address, that you're probably also doing, a good job on some of the pathogens that are easy to address. And that's the one thing about SteraMist that most can't compete with, is that it's quick, it's easy to use, and you have this unbelievable, submicron particle that comes out of their patented solution that ends up as like almost like a dry gas, and it goes everywhere. And it basically, I'm going to make it very simple. It kind of like explodes the bacteria, it explodes the viruses in an instant. And it's one of the only products that the EPA has recognized in that way. And at the end of the day, and I'm really big on residual. I have my first grandbaby that's only a year old now. And the thing for me is I don't want to put something out in the environment that is going to end up, that he may put in his mouth. And so I'm a really big one on what are the residuals. And that's another beauty of SteraMist is that, it breaks down into water and oxygen.
Yep.
Can't beat that one.
No, you can't. Yeah, that's the beauty of the cold plasma arc.
Mm-hmm.
We're the only ones that have it, and it's a beautiful thing. And like you said, it literally explodes those molecules, so it breaks down those biofilms, just like that. Anywhere, any material. That's why it's so great. And BSL 3s, 4s. Anywhere that's manufacturing drugs, so that no cross contamination, deactivates all those things.
And I'm going to expand on that a little bit because I think that, we have, seen SteraMist, and I know that you guys are really, in life sciences, you're there. And, but when we start to, again, talk to different languages, talk to different verticals, cosmetic industry, and they have laboratories and they have manufacturing facilities. Food safety, as you know, I'm going to be looking at a lot of the food safety issues. And, you're talking about the dairy industry I went to the ice cream show recently, and, they're concerned about listeria and how you deal with the listeria, and the coffee industry. You can name so many different industries. Next week I'll be out at Vertical AgCon, and you're talking about, vertical growing, not just cannabis, but vertical growing of vegetables and, edibles that people are starting to pay attention because of climate change, because it's difficult to get fresh fruits and vegetables into bigger cities. And so being able to have container vertical growing is a big deal. So we're starting to see the needs out there. And SteraMist, with its experience and success in life sciences, has that value that can also be shown to be effective in some of these other verticals.
Absolutely. And with the vertical farming and the indoor ag, to me, that's the future. We're running out of farm space. It's the climate change issues. We're going to have to bring it all indoors to places where you really don't farm. Mm-hmm. And it takes up such a smaller footprint, and you have to keep those areas disinfected and clean. So in order to get food to these big cities, like you said, especially year round, you can grow in the wintertime, you can grow in the heat of summer, it doesn't matter. And like you said, those parallels between the life sciences facilities, sometimes you walk into a coffee manufacturer and you're looking around and you're seeing this looks like a laboratory, but all they're doing is, roasting coffee beans and grinding coffee beans. So there's a ton of parallels between those things. So that's a great point. And that being said, what are some disinfection techniques and chemicals that you've seen in the past, whether it be laboratories or the food safety world, that either have continue to be used and don't kind of meet the need, or have kind of gone by the wayside because they didn't fit the need?
Well, I'll take it even a step further than that we have found things safer and better. If biosafety cabinets, for example, we used to use formaldehyde all the time. Do I think that it's still being used in some places? Unfortunately, yes, because they may not have access, especially in developing countries, to other chemicals or other processes. But we just don't use formaldehyde as like we used to. Ethylene oxide as a sterilant, for example. These are things that, we know, have very significant health hazards. Chlorine bleach, I always struggle with chlorine bleach a little bit, because it's one of those things that if you look at it from a lifespan, it has saved many lives. But change is sometimes good, folks. And I'm not going to spray bleach water on my carpet, for example, because we all know what's going to happen. I'm going to be replacing the carpet very quickly. And it off gases. And if you're spraying it in a bathroom and there's urine on the floor, it's going to have some other problems. And so there are chemistries like SteraMist that we can utilize and not have those issues. I think what we've seen with UV light works. We know it works, but we also have to recognize, and I guess this is where a risk assessment and a needs assessment comes into play. It only works as far as the light touches. And so we need to be very careful about that to make sure that, if we are going to use UV light, that it touches what we want it to touch. So there's a lot of things out there. We've learned a lot. I did a video one time about how Patty screws up her microfiber. Because, we've seen a lot of, especially during the pandemic, we have seen a lot of microfiber. And it's really kind of a magic thing. The funny part is, when I first was, no pun intended, exposed to it, it was like, it's plastic? Oh. And then they said, don't put it in with your, cotton cloths. Why? And it's like, I got to go buy new microfiber. But we've started seeing tools that are coming out. I think we're going to see more and more with robotics and AI, and, and people can, kind of roll their eyes at that, but it's going to happen whether we want it to or not.
Yeah, it's very interesting how far we've come with, the tech and the robotics, especially. I know we were out at iTeam in Michigan together, and all their great products, and they're bringing the cleaning world in the future as well. So we were out there. I was showcasing SteraMist, and you were out there with Jeff Jones and his wife and his team. So that was really cool to see all the different technologies, and their microfiber is pretty incredible as well. So a little shout out to iTeam. What would you like to see in the future as far as a protocol goes, so we're not scrubbing as much, so we're not, stressing out this workforce? Because like we were talking about earlier, the workforce is lacking. There's not a lot of people that are doing manual labor jobs anymore, or if they do want to do it, they want all this money. So what would you like to see in the future of a stress-free, lack of, really there's less labor, but also upping the efficiency as well?
Boy, that's a big question. You realize it? And the biosafety answer to all questions are, it depends. I think we need to better understand what it is we're trying to do. And people shy away from that because they want to get into the chemistries of that. We have to have better detection systems to begin with, and whether it's surface detection or air detection. I'm on a scientific advisory board for a company called Y2X Life Sciences that is developing microelectrodes with nanobodies from camelids. And those are camels, alpacas, and llamas. Very unique. And they should, in the next year, have on the market their air quality monitor. But the other part of it is their breathalyzer, where you breathe in and it detects COVID, flu, and RSV in less than 60 seconds.
Wow.
And some of those new technologies that were born out of the need for COVID detection are starting to come to light. And we really need that to protect us, to be able to then say, we have COVID or flu or RSV or measles, since we're seeing measles outbreaks recently, or whatever pathogen, for the new pathogen that comes on, the pathogen X that they talk about, to be able to go and mitigate quickly. So grab your SteraPack, when it matters, grab a Toby, and come in and be able to spray quickly, and mitigate a situation.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great answer, and I think I agree. It's moving into that instant detection phase of the hopefully the present, but of the future. So
on that though, I think that one thing that people don't do often is being able to show their clients that what they're doing is effective. And I think that's important, because we don't see the hazard. You don't, the joke was at ISSA that everybody was like, well, it looks clean, it smells pretty, must be great and good to go, right? Whereas it could still be contaminated completely. And so being able, as a service provider, to show your clients that what you have done is effective, and getting better data to show whether you're in food safety or whether you're in healthcare, that your hospital-acquired infections have gone down, that you're not getting hits in food safety for Listeria or Salmonella or E. coli. In agriculture, that we're not having the problems with avian influenza in our poultry, or, heaven forbid if we ever had African swine fever, that we're being able to mitigate. And you might think I'm a germaphobe. I'm not, not at all. I respect them very much.
They deserve it.
They deserve it. But being better aware and prepared.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. And that's what we're trying to get across to everybody, and do it faster, more efficiently, validate it, and then you get the data out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's all about. And it's a cohesive effort. It's not just us, it's, the whole world, and collaborating.
Oh, yeah. And the collaboration is key, because we got to work together. And especially because, I don't know about you, but, during the pandemic, there were a couple different movies that would come out on pandemics and everything. And some of them are, it's like you're watching them and go, COVID could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
It really could have. And, if the next one that comes, the, pathogen X, mm-hmm. is more infectious, if it attacks, not just the elderly or immunocompromised, but everybody to a degree that is very compromising, it will shut things down quickly. And so, yes, being collaborative, start working together, and, being partners with, even partners, as we've talked about with other companies that, support each other, is really important.
Absolutely. Well, you had a very interesting professional career. We're very glad that you're collaborating with us and trying to improve what we do and get the word about SteraMist out there. So I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on SteraCast.
Thanks, Chris.
And we'll see you next time.
Definitely.